now just to come to represent some of that collaborative work. A younger person in our community who's been very engaged, Casey Marie Thomas with the Greensboro Justice Coalition. And depending on how the timing goes, we will then have by live stream the Reverend Dr. William Barber, who has been supportive of us on the state and national level. And I should say that all of this technology and the beautiful tent and the live streaming has come through his organization. He embraced this and said, this is important. In fact, all the way back to the HKOJ, we embraced the truth process. So we thank him for that. And while Casey is coming, and my daughter's going to be cleaning this, by the way, this is our daughter, one of our daughters, who was there on November 3rd. She was 7 years old then. We have two daughters, and the other one was 8, was not able to be here. And our grandson's here, and our granddaughter's here. This is part of why I've done what I've done. For them and for your children and grandchildren, so that they will have somewhere to stand. They can look back on it. But also here today is Senator Gladys Robinson, Mayor Pro Tem Yvonne Johnson, and I think I saw a few other elected officials. We're assembled here. Some of us don't even have houses. I'm looking at you. I know who you are. Yet some of us are in so-called high places, but we're here together today, standing for justice and equality.
I was asked to speak about what this means for us locally in movement work. And last night, that apology means that we can start bringing forth truth with the city. It is significant in that way, because the truth really does matter. Last night, the Greensboro City Council made an apology to the victims, families, survivors of the Greensboro Massacre after gaslighting survivors in our entire community for over 40 years. The city made an apology. They made this apology because of people power, because of an uprising, and over 40 years of our elders' consistent truth-telling and calling public officials to the carpet to insist that the city tell the truth, and to apologize as an institution for the role the police and the city played in that massacre. They felt that they needed to say sorry, and this is a testament to the power of organized people, to the decades of insistence, and perhaps even a genuine desire for healing. Despite the awkward insistence that the police taking a low-profile approach was not the police helping the Klan and Nazis, the apology was made, and its value is that we may begin to heal this city. I do not say this to pour salt on a healing wound, but sometimes antiseptic stings. This wound can begin to heal, but you have to remove the infected parts. And some of those infected parts last night insisted that Nazis and the Klan and the worker organizers were equally to blame for the massacre, that we have to consider both sides of the story. We see you, Merie Kayabutsa-Waiter. We see you, Nancy Hoffman. This type of governance and thinking is part of the infection that must be cleaned out if we are going to move forward and truly heal this city. As my elders remind me, last night's apology was an important starting point and a move towards truth. The healing can begin, and we can judge the sincerity of this apology by how they handle the Marcus Smith case going forward. If, as the mayor who quoted Martin Luther King Jr. was sincere in saying that freedom is the bonus of telling the truth, and Mrs. Johnson was correct in saying that the truth shall set us free, then I would like to invite our city council and our mayor to be free with us, to get that bonus of freedom by telling the truth about how the Greensboro police killed Marcus Smith, and how the chief, Scott, covered it up. Tell the truth when the police killed a black man on your watch. Tell the truth when it can cost you something. Tell the truth so that we can judge the sincerity of this apology by if you release the records pertaining to the Smith case, so we can know how you and your fellow electeds moved when this happened, and we can move forward with that truth, and we can see that this apology that took 40 years in the making was a sincere step forward. We can judge this apology and the impact it will have on our city in the coming years by how willing you are to move out of the shadow of the police union and stop trying to arrest our way out of problems that are caused by poverty and trauma and underinvestment in Black communities. If this is a place where the healing can start, then let us heal by investing in housing, in real economic development that does not donate our Black and public dollars to people who will throw us crumbs. Invest in the Cure Violence program and other non-police responses and preventative measures. These concrete steps, in addition to your willingness to tell the truth last night, will let us know how you feel, how strong a hold the truth has in our local governance. We will know by how you hold police officers accountable when they harm us now. And so, in that, I would like to thank the city for making that apology. It must have taken a lot if it took over 40 years. And I look forward to moving forward in truth with you on all of these things. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to bring a chair up here? Hello to my brothers and sisters. I greet you in the name of God, in the name of the one who ultimately ensures that truth will always, somehow, some way, have the last say. To my friends, my brother and sister, my mentors, the Reverend Dr. Nelson Johnson, to Mother Joyce Johnson, to my dear sister and advisor, Roz Pellis, to Wesley, who indeed pastors us all in one way or another with his great gifts. And I thank God for him, and to all of you who have gathered here on today. Memory is sacred if it moves us to change and to move towards justice and love. Let us not forget that those who were killed that day, they were demanding that the city and the county and the country and the state addressed poverty and racism. Let us remember that they were doing it as a moral fusion coalition. Sometimes in the media today, you will hear the statement that we're finally seeing Black and white people coming together to address systemic racism. That's not historically accurate. The truth of the matter is the abolition movement was Black and white. The Reconstruction movement in the 1800s was Black and white. The early Union movement, the late 1800s, early 1900s was Black and white. The anti-lynching movement was Black and white. The civil rights movement was Black and white and Jewish and Muslim and Christian. This movement in 1979 was Black. It was white. It was Jewish. It was Latino. It was young. and it was older. In fact, that's why they were attacked. Because they were a fusion coalition that did not believe that racism, systemic racism, should only be an issue for Black people, and that economic injustice should only be an issue for white people. And they did not believe that you could deal with the issues of systemic racism and systemic poverty in separate camps. This is why they were attacked. Some of them had been a part of Black movements and only white movements prior to them coming together. But in '79, after the murder of Dr. King in '68 and trying to continue that legacy and remembering what he said about the triune evils of poverty, racism, and war, they were together. That's why they were attacked. They attacked because they were called ugly names, names that, well, they really aren't ugly names. They're just names that people today even still try to use. When you believe in healthcare, they call you a socialist. When you believe in living wages, they call you a socialist. When you believe in treating everybody right. But I thought that's what Jesus believed in. I thought that's what God believed in. I thought that's what the Bible believes in. I thought that's what our Constitution believes in when it says that we are called to establish justice. We're called to provide for the common good. We're called to provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare. Yes, welfare is a constitutional word. We're called to ensure domestic tranquility, not domestic division. We're called to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and anything that is against that, we are called by our founding documents to alter it. We are called to establish to equal protection under the law, not for all citizens, but for all persons. And so in '79, all of those that were there that day, and the 5 that were brutally murdered, they were simply saying to America, be true to what you say on paper. Be true to what you swear on with your hands on Bibles to uphold, and they were attacked. But it is also why their struggle could not end. And it is also why their struggle must not end. You know, what we see today cannot be separated from what we saw in the past. And my sister who just spoke, you're exactly right. We can't wait 40 years to address systemic racism and systemic classism and violence. What the city council did yesterday says what we should be doing all over this nation today. Post haste. That's the celebration. Greensboro last night became a sign, a 40-year-old sign, but a sign nonetheless. Because if it's a sign that we don't have to wait. You know, the Klan, the Nazis, with elements of law enforcement, 40 years ago in an unholy alliance did their worst. Racism, mind you, is targeted at Black and brown and indigenous people. But let me be clear today. If we talk about systemic racism only as an issue facing Black people and only killing Black people, then we miss what racism really is and how deadly and how demonic and how much of a lie it is. It may be targeted at Black and brown indigenous people, but ultimately racism kills us all. It destroys lives and it destroys the heart of democracy, and it finds itself woven into so much regressive public policy. If I had time, I'd tell you about how that works. And the truth of the matter is what my grandmother said some years ago: if you scratch a racist, you'll find a thief. So if you scratch a racist, you'll also find somebody that'll steal health care for white folk and Black folk and brown folk. If you scratch a racist, you'll find people who will steal living wages for white folk and for Black folk and for indigenous people and Latino people. Racism is targeted at Black and brown people and indigenous people. But ultimately, and remember, on that day, 2 Jewish brothers and sisters, 2 Jewish persons, white Jewish person, 1 white person, a Latino, and a young Black woman, former student government president at at Bennett College, killed. 5 of them on camera, not on video camera of a phone, but the camera of the TV stations. But the spirits and souls of those that died and the victims and their friends, while racism and classism did their worst, our brothers and sisters, the victims, the survivors here today, and those who are yet hollering at us because they're calling out to us from the balconies of heaven, they did their best all these years. The others did their worst. But Joyce and Roz and Nelson and all of you connected and those who died that day but yet live with us, all these years you've done your best not to accept the lies, because you knew how deadly it would be to memory. Your best not to accept the false narrative. Your best not to lose your humanity and give in to hatred as much as it sometimes ran across your mind. You did your best to tell the truth, because there can be no reconciliation without truth. There can be no reconciliation when we cover up and hide from our past. And what happened last night says to the nation, we cannot let the call for justice die. We can never let it die. It says we must change who sits in places of power if we're going to change how cities respond to racism and police violence and poverty. It says that every city today that has to deal with racism, every city today, every state today, this country has to deal with systemic racism and systemic poverty and institutional violence. Because policies that hurt, harm, and destroy are violent. And every city, every state needs really a truth and reconciliation process, not in the future, but right now. Right now. And not something that's cute and pleasing, but something that's true and authentic. Never forget, memory is sacred if it moves us to change. Never forget that if we do not remember right, then we continue to dismember communities and people. We continue to dismember them. And a dismembered community is a sick community. A dismembered state, a dismembered nation is a sick nation. But a beloved community, a beloved state, a beloved country that remembers right and then changes, understands that in order to be beloved, you can't cut anybody out, and you can't deny the truth, and you must be about healing, and healing must be rooted not just in words, but the works of repentance, and the works of repentance require the works of changed public policy until all of us, Nelson, can walk together as God's children. Thank you so much for all you all have done and continue to do and what you inspire. And we make you a promise in the Poor People's Campaign National Call for Moral Revival. We will not leave this work undone until we addressed in this nation systemic racism in all of its forms, systemic poverty, ecological devastation, the war economy, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism. Forward together and not one step back. God bless you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Barber, and thank you so much, Case and Merie Thomas, and all with whom you work day to day, making this dream a reality in Greensboro and beyond. I want to just, for those who may not know her, recognize my sister and friend, Willena Cannon. Welina, if you want to just at least raise your hand. You probably heard our council person, Michelle Kennedy, talk about learning from Welina. They were working on housing justice in Greensboro. And one thing about Welina, those of you who know her, she misses no opportunity to speak the truth. And I've had young people who were students come by the beloved community and said, we met this lady, because Welina was driving an Uber or Lyft or something until just a year or so ago. And as those conversations went on, she said, why don't y'all deal with so-and-so and so? When we were at A&T in the 60s, we did so-and-so. She would inspire folk, and she's just, that's who she is. She speaks the truth, and she acts on it. So we thank her, and with Welina, and along with Signe, who you'll hear from in a few minutes, and Nelson and I, who wrote a letter to our council in 2017, after they did extend an apology, and we thanked them for that. But we said it has to be of substance, and we finally got that on last night. So I just wanted to make sure people know who Welina is. I think I saw one of her sons here, I'm not sure. But we're all still just doing what we can. So, and then the last thing I wanted to say was, if you will look at your e-blast, I hope most of you got that from Beloved earlier today, you'll see our official statement, as well as some statements from supporters like Naomi Tutu, the daughter of the Archbishop Tutu, and Peter Story, Eduardo Gonzalez, who directed the Peruvian Truth Commission. We were able to travel down there a little while, how many years ago now? 10, 15?
A lot of them.
A lot of them, and learn from them. And our own Reverend Mark Seals, a lot of you know him, who did a lot of the work with our immigrant residents, our neighbors. He was a part of the local Truth and Reconciliation Commission here in Greensboro, and others have sent their greetings as well. So take some time when you get back home to read that. All this is being recorded, and you can get it off the Beloved Community Facebook page. So now let's turn to those who have worked with us a little bit more closely. And the first person I want to call up, a lot of you still do like I do. I call her my mayor just like I call Yvonne Johnson my mayor for life. And that is the Mayor Carolyn Allen, who came here from Texas, I think, and has been here and building our community the way it needs to be. And she's a member of our Beloved Community Center board, but she also, along with the Reverend Hedden, who's not able to be here because of some other personal commitments, and the Reverend Z. Holler, who's looking from heaven upon us. The three of them were the local task force co-chairs that helped shepherd this whole process back in the early 2000s. So Mayor Allen, just share a few reflections with us. Give her a second to wait.
I'm not sure why I always end up following a magnificent speaker like Dr. Barber. In any case, he said to us the mending of the past and the present immense need for truth and reconciliation. And I'm here in part to represent those folks, for example, Dee Holler, whose tremendous dedication to this effort inspired me as we served together with the committee that essentially set up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And perhaps for Barbara Walker, who was a member of that commission and whose life ended some time ago. In any case, I'm not sure why I have lived as long as I have. I'm grateful to the Lord for that, but I know that gathered here And with the inspiration of the current city council, this city will move forward with tremendous efforts at truth-telling and in mending lives, not only here, but in many communities. Thank you.
So we'll now hear a live stream from two of our, I'll say Weston, followed by Marty, Nathan, and then our own Signe Foxworth, who still resides in Greensboro, will bring you some of their reflections.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. First, on behalf of Cesar's sister, Dr. Ana Maria Cauce, I want to extend a really heartfelt thanks and appreciation to Nelson Johnson and Joyce Johnson and the members of the Pulpit Forum for their protracted efforts to make this day a reality. I prepared some statements and thought it would be easy to deliver those statements, but my emotions are getting the better of me and I'm all over the place. So I'll just let you know, there's no telling what you might hear me say. The events in Charlottesville chilled me. And I know that that is some of what precipitated this reflection, but it gave me post-traumatic stress. I get it all the time. I was there on November 3rd. I was in the streets. I lived through the gunfire. I got up from under the cars. But when I saw what happened in Charlottesville, I cried all over again, and I had several days of personal trauma. And I thought, my God, have we learned nothing? To see protesters who support the rights of Black and Brown people take a stand against racist violence are still at risk from right-wing violence in America. And that is not good, to say the least. But across the country in America today, many people are saying enough. And the Greensboro City Council realizes their role, their responsibility to add to that dialogue. And for the courage that they showed, I thank them. It took 41 years, but I'm not going to belittle or dismiss the council's vote because it took courage and resolve. It's an important recognition from the city, and I'm not ignorant of what kind of resolve it took to make that happen. I will be proud to know that there will be a Cesar Cauce Scholarship recipient each year. Healing this community, the Greensboro community, and the entire nation can not only be about annual scholarships, but Greensboro and the rest of the country must change their police culture so that they can be the real peacekeepers that we need them to be and not just law enforcers. Don't let this, Greensboro, be the last time that you show some courage and some leadership. We are fighting for the right to vote again, just like after Reconstruction. And voter intimidation is front and center of our lives. Continue to do what you can in Greensboro and add your voices to the people across the country to send a message that we can be better than this. Thank you.
My name's Marty Nathan, and I am in Massachusetts right now. My husband was Michael Nathan, who was a 32-year-old physician murdered by Ku Klux Klansmen and Nazis, along with 4 other wonderful people on November 3rd, 1979. I want to today offer my profound gratitude to Nelson and Joyce Johnson, Willena Cannon, and Signe Waller, the beloved community, the Pulpit Forum, and all of those who fought for decades for the city of Greensboro to come to reckoning with the Greensboro Massacre. I particularly would like to thank the city councilors who, many of them, after years of struggle with their peers and with many others, voted to pass the resolution last night. You did right, and no one can take that from you. On the morning of November 3rd, 1979, I was a naive, young, white doctor hailed from the Midwest who had never personally confronted violent racism or police or official wrongdoing, though I certainly knew that it happened in the world and I stood against it. By November 5th, 1979, I was a 28-year-old widow caring for a 6-month-old daughter and a paralyzed mother-in-law, facing the terrible knowledge that the Greensboro police and local law enforcement agencies had allowed the murder of my life partner and 4 brilliant friends by the Ku Klux Klan and American Nazis. I spent the next decade studying what happened in the Greensboro Massacre as the media investigations and court proceedings unfolded. I traced the pattern back in our country's history. I found the white supremacist violence never occurs in a vacuum, but is supported, encouraged, tolerated, and or directed by those in power, particularly by law enforcement. What the Klan does is criminal. It is only perpetuated because it gets a pass from the police, a tarnishing of the victims from the media, and impunity and cover-up from the courts. This pattern has been repeated nearly ad nauseum over the last century and a half. Last night I watched as brave people represented their changing constituency in Greensboro and said that that history would be exposed and opposed. They gave this necessary gift not only to us, the victims of the massacre, but to the tens of thousands of young people now in the streets demanding an end to racist policing and frequently being met with violence by the ideological descendants of the Greensboro killers. Your courage in Greensboro gives those brave young people the knowledge and the strength in their struggle, and will lead us all to a better society. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Sandy Smith, live like her, dare to struggle and dare to win. Cesar Cauce, live like him, dare to struggle, dare to win. Bill Sampson, live like him, dare to struggle, dare to win. Mike Nathan, be like him, dare to struggle, dare to win. Jim Waller, be like him, dare to struggle, dare to win. Today, the City Council wins. We, the widowed, the wounded, the survivors, we win. Greensboro wins. Thank you to the beloved Community Center, the Pulpit Forum, and the City Council for persevering through this process. For over 5,000 years, we have been living in cultures of domination and violence. We are mired in it, traumatized by it. Surely not the best we humans can achieve, allowing even that we are all flawed human beings. Today, we take a step toward healing and transformation, transforming our society into a peaceful, loving, caring, and just place, where all people are accorded respect and given an equal opportunity to thrive materially and spiritually. Last night's City Council apology for the 1979 Greensboro Massacre may be of far greater importance than you or I can imagine. It happened.
Yes, it did.
It happened.
Yes, it did.
Now, new steps lie ahead. Further possibilities to move forward together for life, truth, justice, peace, and freedom for all. Greensboro, keep rising. Like Sandy, Cesar, Bill, Mike, and Jim, dare to struggle, dare to win. Thank you.
Thank you, Signe. God remember that. Y'all let go.
Very nice. Thank you.
You played it already?
And it is, let's say,
So now we will have our final reflections, and depending on the pleasure of the crowd, we will stay for a little longer and entertain questions and discussion, because this is both a press conference and a celebration. So you probably see tears on some of us, but it is really tears of remembrance, but mainly tears of joy and possibility. So that person is my husband of the last 51 years, Reverend Nelson N. Johnson. And he, on November 3rd, 1979, was the key person we were all organizers, but our grandson's name is Nelson Johnson too, so I don't know what he thinks we were calling him or what. but um, that happens a lot. Um, but he will come and offer for you his reflections on what this decision last night by our city council that you caused to happen means. Nelson?
Normally, we expect the last speaker to be a closer in the preaching tradition. But I'm glad that Reverend Allen started with the close, so I don't have to worry about that. I just want to speak some words from my heart, and then hopefully we have a little time for conversation. Let me begin by saying thanks to all of you who are here today. We, including the widows, the survivors, and all who have walked with us on this journey, are deeply grateful for your presence and for your support. I'll say a little more later about my gratitude to the Greensboro City Council for their courageous decision last night. Unlike some, I was acquainted with racism from my birth. My great-grandfather, born in Louisiana in slavery in 1836, I looked him up. My grandfather, born in Louisiana in 1864, and moved to North Carolina, and that's why I'm here. I grew up in eastern North Carolina. Racism was always a part of my reality, and I always knew it. When I was a senior in high school in November, I rode the bus to the State Student Council convention in Charlotte. It was a long way from eastern North Carolina to Charlotte. And I got to Charlotte, a little friend of mine, we were traveling together. We decided to sit on the front seat of the bus. It really wasn't the front seat, it was the second seat. And then a white man got up and boldly just jammed against my head. I fell over in the lap of my friend. And we were two 17-year-olds who were trembling because all the white people looked away, the ones that didn't throw trash on us and mutter, niggers need to know where their place is. That's part of my upbringing. Beloved, the United States of America faces unprecedented exposure of law enforcement complicity with violent white supremacists and their various organizations. Much of this flows from the highest level of government in our nation. And you heard from the commander-in-chief speaking to paramilitary white supremacist organizations. Stand back, but stand by. The reaction of killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others by police has accelerated a movement under the broad banner of Black Lives Matter. That movement, our movement, is demanding truth and accountability for historic systemic racism that promotes poverty. It poisons every aspect of our institutions, from the criminal justice system to health care to efforts to sabotage voting rights, always trying to squeeze more wealth out of those who are working hard every day without adequate pay. And even poor folk who don't even have a job keep squeezing all of us. Beloved, our nation is creeping more and more toward mass strife if not civil war. Human decency, justice, and democracy are at stake. And I want to declare today that truth is our friend. Confusion is not. Falsehood is not. Fear-mongering is not. Threat of force, all of these are not our friends, they are our enemy. This is the context in which the City Council of Greensboro, after years of persistent organizing for truth and justice by a broad range of people, is acknowledging the deep complicity of the Greensboro Police Department, which implies the city as well, with the Ku Klux Klan. I'm not too slow after all. And the American Nazi Party members in carrying out what I term as a North American death squad action. They kill not just a general category called activists, they killed the president of the union at Haw River, Jim Waller. Shot him in the back. They killed, oh, I love this wind. It's beginning to blow up here. Reverend Allen, it feels like the Holy Spirit. They shot our beautiful sister, Sandy Smith, who was doing her best to get the children behind the building. And she came back to get more children, and a bullet caught her between the eyes, and she slumped over against the building. They shot Cesar Cauce, a powerful organizer at Duke University, where there were non-professional workers in the dining hall and chicken workers at chicken plants. Shot him through the heart. And then Dr. Michael Nathan, who was rushing to help those injured, was shot in the face by a shotgun, and it was most gruesome of all. And then William Sampson, the lead organizer at the largest denim-producing factory in the world, White Oak, was shot through the heart and killed. So I just wanted to make that really plain, that these were gifted and committed people. They were not just rebel-rousers looking for something to do on a Saturday morning. On that fateful day, November 3rd, 1979, let me just say this. This matter of truth, the truth is that the march was to culminate in a conference with black and white workers from nearby textile mills in Greensboro, but also from Danville and Martinville and Kannapolis and Rocky Mount, were all coming to Greensboro. And the purpose of that potentially exciting day was to engage the intertwined realities of poverty and racism and union busting. We believe then and we believe now that uniting poor folk of all races and all ethnicities is absolutely necessary to ground a transformative movement that can overcome poverty and racism. So on that fateful day, November 3rd, 1979, it was a bright, sunny day, just like today. Instead of a police escort, what we were faced with was a Klan and Nazi caravan who drove into the preparation site unimpeded and fired a shot out of the lead car in the window. Everybody ran back from the lead car, and then the Klan and Nazis jumped out of the 9th car, and the weapons were in the 8th car. The hood, the back flew up. They took out their guns and shot the people that I've just named. And by the way, the police car following the caravan had photographed the Klan and Nazis collecting the guns at the corner of I-85 and up there by that, off I-85. And they had to drive 5 miles across town. He took the pictures of them putting the guns in the trunk of the car and then did not stop them for carrying concealed weapons, but followed them all the way to the site and then did nothing to call in assistance on the way over there. So there is deep complicity. Now, the people who were attacked were largely pro-union and pro-community empowerment organizers. Some were members of the Communist Workers' Party, serving as union officials and organizers. On the first day, on the afternoon, after the killings, the News and Record, they were doing 2 newspapers then a day. That afternoon edition said that the Worker Viewpoint organization was ambushed by Klan and Nazis. Our plan was to announce the change of our name at the conference. That would be both a celebration and a training, and the name was being changed from Worker Viewpoint Organization to the Communist Workers' Party. Some of us have had to rethink that. And on that morning, many in Morningside community where the massacre occurred, including children, saw these bodies laying on the ground, their blood soaking into the soil of that community, children crying. Not 1 minute of counseling or attention to that community occurred, which speaks volumes about what they were trying to do. The truth is, and it includes the fact that the GPD had a paid informant inside of the KKK who informed his controller of the planned violent attack. That information was delivered all the way up to the chief weeks before this happened. It was conveyed that the KKK and the Nazis had machine guns, they had all kinds of ammunition, they had cartons of dynamite, they had handguns and other weapons, and that they were coming to Greensboro explicitly to attack this march. They had no other reason to gather in Greensboro on that day. And the police knew all of that. This information has been collaborated independently by several federal agencies, including the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They had agents in both of these and knew all about this. So I'm saying to you, from the very beginning, this was not about confusion. It was not about the police didn't know where the march started. It was about a setup. And so the plan of the police was to figure out what kind of justification could you put in place in order to explain what was unexplainable. If you saw them putting the guns in the car, if you took pictures of them putting guns in the car 5 miles from the site, and you did nothing, you called nobody, you didn't arrest anybody, and then you weren't there when they drove in and they fired that shot in the front, pushing everybody back, and people ran into a hail of bullets. And then the police came screaming in, and I was standing there, the one who had negotiated the parade permit, that the police asked the Klan to go get the parade permit, and on the parade permit was that we would have no guns concealed or otherwise. I'm telling you the truth today. You haven't heard this truth, and I know you haven't heard it. Gave it to the Klan. They knew where the march started. The police knew where the march started, but they pulled everybody out, including people who were there doing basic domestic surveillance. So there were no police in the area anywhere. And then we were shot down, and they came in, and I knew this. I negotiated the parade permit. I looked the captain in the eye when he said, "Sign that you will not have any guns." I said, "Why are you asking me to do this? Do you know something I don't know?" He said, "Well, this is what I know. You won't get a parade permit unless you sign here. We will provide your protection." I signed. And therefore, when I was looking at my beloved brother and turn over his body and saw him take his last breath, I knew at that moment that this was not about some freak accident, that this was a North American death squad. And I want you to know that. The truth included all of what I said. But beloved, with all of this information, not one single police officer was present. I met the police officer and shook his hand, who said, "We'll meet you there." His name was Hampton, Lieutenant Hampton. I got to know his daughters and his babysitter, his granddaughter. He left town shortly after, been the police chief in 3 cities, but we can't get up with him to come back to Greensboro and offer testimony at the truth process or at any of the trials. He was not there. So, beloved, I want us to appreciate the magnitude and the depth of what happened. But having said all of that, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the city council. I was pained to listen to some of the nonsense from a couple of city council people who took the disinformation and wrapped it into a justification which came straight from the COINTELPRO type apparatus. Now, I have tried over the years to acknowledge my weakness, my flaws, and my faults, and I'll continue to do so. I wrote it up in the Truth Report that's available through the Beloved Community Center, but none of that justifies the daylight murder that took place in Morningside on November 3rd, 1979. Before I conclude, I want to share a couple of brief stories. I was renewed my faith and entered seminary in 1986. In 1987, when I was home, an SBI agent came and knocked on our door and said, "What are y'all gonna do about the plan of the Klan to march on," I'll get that later, to march on Greensboro, 1987. And their marching on Greensboro would amount to spitting on the graves of the people they had killed. And I knew then I was the most visible person identified that I had to try to stop this. And so I took time and found the Grand Dragon's address. I called and left a message that I wanted to meet with him. As a matter of fact, I had gone down to his house and slid a note under his door, and then I called. And he just started cursing when he picked up the phone. I said, "I've been to your house." He said, "You haven't been to my blah, blah house." I said, "I've been to your house, and I'm not playing. I want to talk to you." And after a cursing streak and a little bit of time, he said, and I told him, "I'm not coming to do anything. I need to talk to you." He said, "On the condition, number 1, that you be by yourself. Number 2, that you don't be armed. Number 3, that you meet us where we want to meet." I agreed. And as I drove down there a couple of weeks later, I got scared. Scared. And I pulled over beside the road and prayed. But I pressed on down there. And there were 6 of them in a double-seat pickup truck and beckoned to me to follow them. And I did. They went into Salisbury in the Holiday Inn and got a room and set me in front of a big window. By the way, I checked with Reverend Harrison, my pastor, and I checked with 2 professors at Virginia Union. Both of them said, "It's not a good idea, Johnson." But my pastor said, "If that's your conviction, go ahead and do it." And as we sat there, I asked them, "Why are you coming back to Greensboro after what y'all did?" They said, "Because you black people raped our women." And so I said, "Listen to me, Carol." His name was Carol Crawford. He was a Grand Dragon then. "Have you ever looked at the rainbow of colors in the black race? Do you think all of that came from black men raping white women? You know what happened in the master's house. You know what happened behind those huts. You know what happened at the end of Cotton Road, that y'all abused our women whenever you wanted to, and when we tried to stand up against it, you hung us." He actually paused. He said, "And other reasons y'all taking our jobs." And I said, "We working in the textile industry. Tell me one black man that owns a textile company. The people who are hiring people should have been hiring people years ago. But the mills themselves are moving out of North Carolina to Korea and various other places. So after all of this talking, and we talked for 2 hours, he said, you know why you're sitting in front of that window? I said, because that's the seat you offered me. He said, because we thought you were going to pull something on us. And we've had a gun trained on you from that window across there ever since you've been sitting here. I didn't say it, but I almost said, thanks for sharing. But this is what we ended up with. They said, we're going to come. We got to come. Because if we went back and told the rest of the Klan that an in person came down here and convinced us not to come, we'd be put out the Klan, which I thought was an excellent idea. But I didn't say that because I wanted to get out of there myself. All of that's to say that we tried, and I've shared the story a little bit, it's never been publicly printed anywhere because it's inconsistent with the view that we are some kind of maniacs that lost our mind and got out there and tried to seduce the Klan into a fight so we could get ourselves killed and maybe even our children. That's the absurdity that this city has stooped to, and you need to know that because the apology is important, but the truth is more important. And I want to say that Signe and I, where is Signe? Went over to Winston-Salem during the truth process and met with Roland Wayne Wood. And Alex was with us. His father-in-law was shot. And sat down with him. Alex and Signe went in and talked to him. I joined them later. And Woods was really a big man sitting on a convalescent bed, and he was coming to the end of his journey. And Alex asked, why did you kill my daddy or my father? And he said, because I was full of hate. And he said, the other thing is that the guy that I thought was in the leadership of the Nazis, his name is Bernard Bukovich, but he was really with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, told me if I did not come, and if I did not mobilize my men to come and bring the guns, that he would see that I would be demoted in the Nazis and lose my position. I'm telling you the truth about some of what's surrounding all of this. But let me bring this to an end. At the beginning, I shared some words about the state of our nation. The whole nation now seems eerily similar to the atmosphere right after the killings in 1979. We are inundated with falsehoods. We have a bully in charge of the country. We have threats growing from paramilitary groups all over the country. And so I want to say that I deeply appreciate what the city council did. Although because of what I know, it didn't get into any particular depth, but they probably don't know the depths. I don't share this often. But I want to thank them, each one of them, that found the courage to vote to extend an apology that implicated not only the police, but themselves as the leaders of the city. And I want to thank them for it. Beloved, Greensboro is the home of the nation's first city-in movement, Woodworth, February 1, 1960. It is the home of the nation's first and only reconciliation, Truth and Reconciliation process, 206 to 204. Bishop Tutu came to work with us on this twice. Members came from Peru. And beloved community, Greensboro, hosted the international gathering of truth commissions from around the world, right there on Bennett College campus. And we squeezed people into the meeting room at Beloved Community Center. You know nothing about this because it was essentially blocked from the newspaper. So I want to conclude that our prayer is that this small but significant people's victory can serve as inspiration for a national truth, healing, justice, and reconciliation process, and that it can help this city. And I want to believe, and I want you to believe with me, that it can help this nation move away from our tortured and bleak yesterday to a bright and beautiful tomorrow. God bless you, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Nelson, and thank all of you for your patience. We will be happy to take a few questions. There's some water here if anybody needs to be refreshed. But I want to take just a few more minutes to thank some people in particular, starting with the Shiloh Church family. We've never asked, by the way, Shiloh is a home church for us in Greensboro. Both of our daughters were baptized at this church. But we've never asked Shiloh to do anything that if they were at all possible to do it, that they didn't do it. A lot, and that means a lot to be able to come back home and do what needs to be done. So Deacon Warren Williams over there, I got his cell number in my phone, and of course the pastor, Reverend Steve Allen, have always welcomed us, and that counts for a whole lot. I see Nelson's classmate and one of our former physicians, Dr. McKenzie, I think, back there. That means a lot, and we thank y'all for being that light as a church here in this community. And also the repairs of the breach I mentioned already in the Poor People's Campaign. A lot of this is their team. Some are on contract, Fusion Films. Eric, who is really from Greensboro, I never see him here anymore, but he and his wife are all over the country doing this work. And Peter Anlin and his team for a lot of the technical setup. So things have gone smooth as far as I know, from the live streaming to being here. And so we thank them for that. And of course, the Pulpit Forum. The Pulpit Forum. I'm so sorry that Reverend Hedden cannot be here today, but he's among us. He'll be here because the work is going to continue, and all those clergy who came out. And of course, the City Council. I haven't had a chance to write them individually yet, but we will get to that. We do thank them. We're so glad that Mayor Yvonne is here with us today, as she has been on so many occasions. And then there is a special group that many of you may not know, and that is the staff and volunteers. Many are mainly volunteers at Beloved Community. We're not one of those rich organizations, but we have a whole lot of rich energy. So young sister Andrea and Metcalf and Gillette Rosenblith, Marlon Petty, Irvin Allen, who is Reverend Allen's son, Wesley Marsh, you met already, though he officially works somewhere else, and he's still part of Beloved Community, and T.C. Muhammad, who's officially with the Hip Hop Caucus, but is clearly Beloved Community. And then our senior veteran organizer, Lewis Brandon, that has been in this community walking back and forth, teaching, organizing for decades. And we thank God for him. And the last group that's so important to us is, again, our family. Our two daughters, Akua and Ayo, and our grandchildren are here, Elise. You mind standing so people can see? Elise is a senior now at A&T, and headed to law school, Reverend Allen. And then I think you saw Nelson Josiah. Where is he? Okay. He's almost as tall as Elise. He's just a sixth grader, but Taekwondo aficionado and loves art and what have you, and tells his granddad he's going to be a preacher as well. So we just could not do and be who we are if we didn't have this rich, loving family that started with our parents, because it's been so wonderful to have kids I didn't have to worry about hither and there. But they really have been in their own way. They're who they are, but they're our children and support us and our grandchildren. So we love you and appreciate you for being who you are. So, I know the hour is late, but if there are any questions, we're ready to take them on. And it's late, and it's lunchtime. But we do plan to, I was speaking with Roz Pellis recently, and we said we've got to figure out how to have a few more online sessions because this is probably bigger, I think Signe said that, than we realized, and have the occasion where we can have a more dialogical kind of exploration of this thing. What does this mean and what can it mean in our country? So why don't we just close this? Reverend Allen, I don't know whether you want to do a bit of a benediction for us and maybe just stand back from the mic. And we thank you. And Reverend J said we'll be around for a few more minutes. Anybody who wants to talk, just one-on-one. But again, thank you, and thank you. This community, this country, our youth who are coming on, thank you.
Now to him who is able to keep us all in his divine presence, to help us to restore community, to create an atmosphere of love, to help us to walk together, to take not one step back, but to be ever mindful that we are created in his image, on his earth, to be like him, and to love one another.
Yeah.
Go in peace and take peace with you.
Yes.
But seek justice always
Yes.
until we shall have it. And then we can be at peace.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So, Marla, if you can help Signe and